And so welcome, dear listener. In this first episode of Hidden Roots, where folklore is unveiled, let us bring these old stories to life, breathe into them, and honor them with the reverence they deserve. In the early morning light, before the sun had chased the mists from the valley floor, a young mother stood at her door. Her gaze swept across the dew-kissed fields, stopping at the trees that fringed their small clearing. Her daughter was late returning from the village, and worry gnawed at her. She called out to the empty wood, her voice tight with concern. No answer came. Only the wind stirred the leaves above in response. Such mornings were rare in this close-knit village nestled amidst whispering pines and shrouded in perpetual mists. Life here was a tapestry woven with the threads of routine. Days began with the sun's shy peak over the mountain peaks, followed by the comforting rituals that marked the passing of time. The rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer echoed through the village, mingling with the lilting laughter of women at their looms. The air was thick with the aroma of baking bread and wood smoke, creating a sense of belonging that was as tangible as the rough-hewn beams of their homes. For those who lived here, life flowed steadily, much like the nearby stream, day after day, season after season. It was a world where change was as unexpected as a cloudless sky in winter. This idyllic existence was further fortified by the deep-rooted faith that bound the villagers together. Every aspect of their lives was steeped in prayer and ritual, providing a sense of security that transcended the tangible. Each evening, as twilight deepened into night, they would gather in the village square, their voices rising in unison as they recited ancient prayers, their words carried aloft by the stillness of the night. These rituals, passed down through generations, were more than just words. They were talismans against the encroaching darkness, tangible links to a past that offered wisdom for their present. Yet even within this sheltered haven, the specter of the outside world occasionally loomed, carried on the wind that rustled through the pines. Tales of distant lands, of shadowy figures lurking beyond the familiar hills, served as cautionary whispers. And so it was on this very morning when the news arrived, carried by a traveler who had braved the wilds beyond their sheltered valley. His words painted a grim picture of a marauding wolf, a creature of immense size and ferocity, preying on travelers and livestock alike. This was no ordinary wolf, he claimed, but a demon in disguise, a harbinger of chaos and death. Fear, like a tenacious vine, began to creep into the hearts of the villagers. Mothers clutched their children close, their prayers taking on a more fervent tone. Even the stoic men of the village shifted uneasily, their gazes instinctively drifting to the weapons at their side. And in this atmosphere of mounting dread, the absence of the young girl took on a new and sinister undertone. Had the beast claimed her? Was she lying somewhere in the woods, a victim of the merciless predator? As the hours stretched on and the sun climbed higher, their worst fears seemed to be confirmed. A lone figure emerged from the trees, her gait unsteady, her eyes vacant. It was the girl. Relief washed over the villagers, quickly followed by a surge of anger and betrayal. For there in her arms, swaddled in a bloody cloth, lay a lifeless babe. Their worst fears had come to pass. The wolf had struck, and in its wake, left a village teetering on the brink of despair. Now let us step back, dear listener, and weave our way into the very fabric of these ancient tales. Picture a time before the glow of neon lights and the hum of smartphones filled our nights. Imagine a world where flickering candlelight was the only illumination, where stories weren't swiped on a screen but passed around in hushed whispers. This was the realm where the tales we know today saw their first dawn. Stories have always been humanity's North Star, guiding us through the darkest nights and echoing the fears and hopes that have resonated across generations. In the early days, these narratives weren't mere fantasies or morals for children. They were deeply ingrained in everyday life. Think of evenings spent in close-knit communities, huddled around fires that crackled with warmth and life. The flickering flames danced in sync with the speaker's voice, casting long shadows that mimicked the rise and fall of his words. Each story was a universe unto itself, full of characters that sprang to life in the listener's imagination. Amongst the most prominent figures in these early narratives were, of course, the wolves. Wolves weren't just animals. They embodied the wild, the untamed spirit that existed beyond the protective boundaries of human settlements. For our ancestors, they were symbols of both fascination and fear, representing the raw forces of nature that demanded respect and caution. Stories about them often served as cautionary tales, emphasizing the importance of heeding their warnings, such as staying away from dense forests at night or traveling in groups to avoid being isolated and vulnerable. These weren't just stories. They were survival guides encoded in narrative form. As the centuries rolled on, these stories didn't stay static. They evolved, adapting to the changing times and the societal norms that shifted with them. The stark realities of life, the ever-present threat of danger, the struggle for survival, and the blurring lines between good and evil gave birth to more complex narratives. The early tales of caution evolved into full-blown stories, complete with intricate plots and multifaceted characters. And thus it was that stories like the one you and I are discussing tonight found their roots in the fertile soil of early human experience. Now let us dive deeper into the winding paths of belief and lore surrounding the wolf. an animal whose image has been indelibly imprinted on the canvas of human history. In the tapestry of folklore, the wolf emerges not merely as a wild beast, but as a symbol laden with layers of meaning. Its howls, often echoing through the stillness of the night, were seen as messages from beyond, carrying with them spirits or souls seeking passage into the mortal realm. This belief led to a world where the boundaries between the natural and supernatural were blurred. If the wolf could speak, its language was the wind and its message carried on the backs of owls. For our ancestors, understanding these messages was crucial. The wolf's presence, whether through its physical form or ethereal calls, was something to be acknowledged, respected, and even feared. Adding another layer to this enigma, the belief in shapeshifters further intertwined the wolf with the realm of the mystical. Shapeshifters, individuals with the extraordinary ability to transform themselves into wolves, became figures of both intrigue and apprehension. These transformations were not mere feats of illusion, but profound acts imbued with spiritual significance. The ability to shift into a wolf form was often associated with trials, tests of character, and intense experiences that marked pivotal moments in a person's life. Such beliefs gave rise to a society where every encounter with a wolf could potentially be an encounter with the unknown, where every rustle in the bushes might conceal not just a wild animal, but a soul wrestling with its own internal battles. And so as we continue our journey through the layers of belief, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of a world where wolves are more than just animals, where they serve as messengers, shapeshifters, and embodiments of the unseen forces that shape our destinies. Now let us journey through the chronicles of the past, where we'll uncover the intriguing tales and beliefs surrounding the wolf. And let us embark on this adventure guided by the insights of the esteemed folklorist Jack Zips, whose work has illuminated the depths of many classic stories. According to Zipes, these early tales were primarily concerned with imparting practical lessons, serving as cautionary reminders about the perils that lay in wait in an unforgiving world. Wolves, in this context, weren't just predators. They were personifications of the harsh realities that humans face daily. Their strength, cunning, and ruthlessness mirrored the challenges that life threw at people, making them fitting symbols and stories meant to prepare and protect. However, the concept of the wolf wasn't confined to the realm of physical danger. As Zips points out, the wolf also represented something more abstract, a force that could corrupt and deceive. This duality is evident in the various guises the wolf takes in these narratives, from the big bad wolf that devours Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother to the cunning wolf that deceives the woodman and the huntsman. This shape-shifting aspect of the wolf reflects a deeper layer of meaning. It symbolizes the unpredictability of the world, the constant threat of betrayal, and the need for vigilance against not just external threats, but also the darker aspects of human nature. The wolf becomes a metaphor for the cunning and deceit that could lurk even in the most unexpected corners, a reminder to keep one's wits sharp at all times. And as we delve deeper into the heart of these ancient narratives, we begin to see how the wolf becomes a multifaceted symbol, a representation of the harsh realities, the hidden dangers, and the deceptive nature of the world our ancestors inhabited. And so now we step into the grand halls of history, where the elite few wove their influence into the very fabric of our stories, forever altering the landscape of our childhood tales. In a world where power often corrupts, a group of influential individuals sought to mold stories to fit their own moral agendas. Their intentions, however, were far from innocent. Let us now explore how these stories served as pawns in a game of social control. These select few, driven by their own biases and goals, saw an opportunity in narratives like Little Red Riding Hood. By manipulating these tales, they could subtly influence the masses, shaping their perceptions and behaviors without raising suspicion. This manipulation wasn't overt. Instead, it was woven into the very essence of the stories, becoming part of the fabric of our collective consciousness. One way they exerted their influence was through adaptation. They took existing stories and molded them to align with their desired message. For instance, they emphasized the role of obedience and submission, making characters like Little Red Riding Hood a cautionary example of what happens when one disobeys authority. By promoting certain versions of these stories, they instilled values that benefited their social order, inadvertently shaping the morality that generations of listeners would internalize. Furthermore, they actively shaped the narratives to fit their worldview, often infusing them with religious undertones and moral lessons. This process of infusion served to indoctrinate young minds, making religion and obedience seem like the only logical path. It was as if they were planting seeds of their ideology directly into the fertile minds of their audience. And as we contemplate the methods employed by these powerful few, we realize that they created a system where stories became vessels of social control. Through subtle adaptations and the strategic promotion of certain versions of tales, they wove their influence into the very fabric of our cultural heritage. So let us reflect on the methods used by these influential individuals and the impact they had on shaping the stories we tell. Join me once more as we continue our exploration into the murky origins of beloved fairy tales. We begin our fairy tale journey in an era before recording devices, before paper and printing presses, and when stories were communal property, evolving and changing with every telling. Oral tradition gave birth to a wealth of folktales and fairy tales, and these were kept alive through public recitation, usually by wandering storytellers known as trouvères or bards. The earliest written record of a Little Red Riding Hood type story comes from the late 10th century. We find this tale encapsulated within another, recounted by the Persian poet, astronomer, and geographer al-Idrisi in his book of various tales called the Kitab al-Berfides al-Adib. This framing narrative follows a king and his son who venture out hunting, only to come across a dilapidated cottage deep within the forest. Inside they find a youth asleep enveloped by a magical slumber. The king's son enters this Sleeping Beauty-style sequence, waking the girl and inadvertently causing a curse to break. As a reward for being woken, the grateful princess offers him a choice of 3 gifts, and he chooses to have whatever he wishes put into a casket. Curious about what lay inside, the king's son orders the casket opened, and to his surprise, there lies another smaller casket. Upon opening this second box he finds a third, and then, after opening the innermost casket, he discovers a beautiful young woman. Again, she thanks him for breaking a curse and offers him a gift. And again, he asks for the gift to be placed in a series of nested boxes, and when he finally opens the innermost box, he finds himself staring into the face of an old woman. Not particularly pleased with the ruse, the king's son threatens her with death unless she grants him his freedom. So the old woman weaves a spell upon him, transporting him outside the cottage. As the king's son disappears, the old woman transforms into a lovely girl. As he looks back toward the cottage, he sees her emerge, carrying a basket of food. She soon approaches him, and after revealing herself as a princess who had tricked him, she invites him to accompany her back to the village. Along the way, she explains that the old woman he had encountered was actually an evil witch, who would have transformed him into a slave for the rest of his life if he had been taken back to her hut, and because he was alone in the woods, he might as well have been tricked by her magic. Once in the village, she warns him not to fall victim to sorcery and to guard against beautiful women, especially those who travel alone. Then she vanishes, leaving him in contemplation. The next tale begins with a young woman preparing to visit her sick grandmother. She is well equipped, bringing bread, cheese, wine, and perfume to aid her grandmother's recovery. On the way, she encounters a wolf, who, having previously followed hunters into the village, knows that this girl is unaccompanied and unprotected. The wolf strikes up a casual conversation and learns that the girl is on her way to see her grandmother. At this point, the wolf cuts across the path to the grandmother's house, arriving first and consuming the old woman whole. Moments later, the girl arrives and, without any suspicion, enters the house. The wolf, now disguised as the grandmother, is in bed awaiting her arrival. It is night and the shutters are closed, so the girl cannot see the wolf's gruesome disguise. She greets her fake grandmother and admires the furnishings, including a nice wicker basket. The wolf tells her it belongs to her. After sitting for a bit, the girl decides to go to the nearby forest to forage for flowers. She fashions a garland for herself and returns home, unaware that the wolf has slipped out the door to await her arrival. Once outside, it jumps into the girl's bed and once again assumes the guise of the grandmother. Soon, the real grandmother's brother arrives, hungry for blood. He enters the room and sees the girl sitting beside the wolf dressed as her grandmother. The wolf leaps from the bed and devours both the girl and her uncle, and that is the last we hear of either of them. In another version, we meet a young woman on her way to visit her ailing grandmother. She is accompanied by a dog and a cat. Along the way, they encounter a wolf, and rather than pretend to be a hunter like in the previous story, the wolf speaks freely of his desire to eat both the girl and her grandmother. The girl and her animal companions become trapped in a cave where the wolf has hidden himself and its cubs. The animals, however, refuse to let the girl enter until she promises to look after the cubs should their mother die. Sadly, the grandmother falls ill, and the wolf, learning that she is near, abandons his plan to devour the girl and her pets. He dashes to the grandmother's house, eats her, and settles in to wait for his meal to arrive. Soon enough, the girl arrives and, having heard her grandmother's pleas for help, ventures into the house. The wolf, unable to resist any longer, pounces. But in a stroke of luck, the girl stabs the beast with a knife. The wolf flees, realizing that he has met his match. The next day, the girl takes her dog and cat into the woods to search for the wolf. As punishment for his crimes, the animals leave the wolf trapped inside a hollow log, and the girl returns home, victorious. As we can see from these early versions, the story of Little Red Riding Hood features many of the key elements we associate with the modern fairy tale, including a naive and curious girl, a predatory wolf, and a suspenseful journey through the forest. Each version highlights different themes and motifs, showcasing the evolution and diversity of folk storytelling traditions. The story type itself is classified as meaning it originated in oral tradition and was transmitted through generations of storytellers. It is part of the larger Thompson User Index, or a TU, which classifies folktales based on their narrative motifs. The relevant classification for this particular story is 327, and this specific category encompasses numerous variations found around the globe. While European audiences may be most familiar with the story as presented by the Brothers Grimm, its roots can be traced back to much older tales. The Grimm version, published in 1812 as part of their collection entitled Grimm's Fairy Tales, is indeed one of the most famous and influential reads. Despite its enduring popularity, the Grimm's version departs from earlier motifs, notably omitting the girl's animal companions and altering the fate of the main characters. The ending famously concludes with the hunter's arrival, rescuing the girl and punishing the wolf. However, this resolution differs from the original tale types, which typically emphasize cautionary lessons about the dangers of the wilderness and the consequences of night. In earlier versions, the girl often faces a grim fate at the hands of predators like the wolf, serving as a warning to young listeners not to stray from the safety of home and to heed the advice of wiser, more experienced characters. The moral of the story revolved around avoiding dangerous situations and recognizing potential threats, such as the deceptively charming wolf who preys on the vulnerable. The Grimm's version, however, deviates from these established motifs, introducing elements that transformed the narrative into a beloved fairy tale. The inclusion of a heroic rescuer and the emphasis on good triumphing over evil resonated with audiences, shaping the story's trajectory and solidifying its place in literary history. Today, the tale continues to capture the imagination, inspiring countless adaptations across various media. From classic animated films to modern retellings, Little Red Riding Hood remains a timeless story, captivating audiences of all ages. Its enduring popularity speaks to the universal themes it explores, such as the battle between good and evil, the importance of courage and the power of love and family. Before we delve further into the origins and deeper meanings behind the story of Little Red Riding Hood, if you enjoyed this video, I invite you to hit that thumbs up button. If you haven't already, consider subscribing. Now let's continue our journey. As our exploration of Little Red Riding Hood continues, it's important to recognize that the story has existed in various forms for centuries, reflecting diverse cultural influences and serving multiple narrative purposes. While the Grimm version is widely recognized, delving into older tales provides valuable insights into the evolution of storytelling and the deeper meanings embedded within these narratives. Thank you for joining me on this enchanting journey through the origins and enduring legacy of Little Red Riding Hood. If you found this video delightful, I invite you to show your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more enchanting tales. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, the greatest adventures often begin with a single click. How do we find ourselves inside fairy tales? How do stories born in the shadowy corners of ancient folklore somehow become timeless parts of our childhood, shaping our morals and our fears? To answer, we must listen carefully to the cadence of their voices, the rhythm of their rhymes. We must seek out the patterns they reveal, the clues they leave in their wake, for these are not merely fantastical flights of fancy. No, these are threads spun from the raw material of human experience, where ancient fears and beliefs are subtly sewn into narratives that endure. Take, for instance, the most famous tale from Europe's past. The story we know as Snow White. At first glance, it seems a whimsical narrative of a beautiful princess, a poisoned apple, and a handsome prince's kiss. But when we peer beneath this sugary exterior, we discover a chilling subtext echoing with dread. Notice how Snow White, fleeing persecution from her stepmother, finds refuge with 7 dwarfs. These are not just small, jolly miners. No, they are explicitly described as eating and drinking, sleeping in beds, performing domestic tasks. Their lifestyle mirrors that of a married couple. Each dwarf represents half of a whole, making a set of 7 equivalent to 3 in a 2 pairs. 3 and a 2 is a potent symbol, rooted in ancient paganism, representing a fertile union of male and female. In a more symbolic reading, the 7 dwarves represent the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, a recurring motif in archaic cultures signifying a profound connection to nature and the cycles of the seasons. Next, consider the huntsman. Typically depicted as strong and authoritative, he is tasked with taking Snow White into the forest, but ultimately cannot bear to carry out his orders. His hesitation reflects a broader reverence for the natural world, a respect for life that aligns with older pagan traditions where harming wildlife was seen as a grave offense. The fact that the huntsman cannot bring himself to kill Snow White reinforces the notion that even within a Christian context, early Europeans carried remnants of their pre-Christian beliefs. Finally, we come to the enigmatic magic mirror. It serves as the queen's advisor, offering counsel and pronouncements that often border on the sinister. In the original German version of the tale, the mirror is not just a source of information, but an independent entity with its own will and agency. This mirrors the ancient Germanic belief in a spiritual realm existing alongside our own, a realm that could be accessed through certain objects like mirrors. The mirror becomes a portal to the supernatural, blurring the line between reality and the spirit world. When we weave all these elements together, the tale of Snow White takes on a new dimension. It's no longer merely a story about a beautiful princess, but a symbolic exploration of the relationship between humanity and nature. Snow White embodies the purity of the natural world. The dwarfs symbolize the cycles of life and death inherent in nature. The huntsman represents the struggle to reconcile Christian morality with pagan sensibilities, while the magic mirror acts as a gateway to the spirits of the earth. Now, this might seem like a vast leap in interpretation, but folklore, by its very nature, demands a deeper reading. Fairy tales, myths, and legends are not just stories meant to entertain. They are cultural artifacts encapsulating a society's deepest fears, values, and beliefs. By studying these tales, we can uncover layers of meaning that reveal how people in different times understood their place in the cosmos. Consider the legend of King Arthur. On the surface, it's an epic saga of a noble king, his valiant knights, and their quest for the Holy Grail. But dig deeper, and we find echoes of earlier British traditions. Arthur himself may have been inspired by a historical war leader. His name possibly derived from a Celtic root, meaning bear. This ties him to the revered bear cult found across Europe during the Iron Age, indicating a syncretism of local customs with incoming Christianity. Then we have the Knights of the Round Table, a fellowship founded on ideals of chivalry and brotherhood. The Round Table itself, a common feature in later Arthurian tales, holds deeper significance. Its circular shape symbolizes the cyclical nature of time, a concept central to pre-Christian thought. This is further emphasized by the presence of the Fisher King, a wounded ruler who can only be healed by a pure outsider, mirroring the dying and resurrecting god found in countless pagan mythologies. Even Merlin, the legendary wizard, reveals traces of older beliefs. His ability to shapeshift, control the weather, and predict the future aligns him with the practices of pagan priests, druids, who were often viewed with suspicion by early Christians. In essence, the Arthurian legends carry the imprint of a culture evolving from paganism to Christianity. Arthur as a syncretic deity, the Knights of the Round Table with their emphasis on cycles and seasons, and Merlin as a figure rooted in pre-Christian practices. All these elements point to a complex process of cultural change, where old ways were neither forgotten nor erased, but absorbed and reinterpreted in a changing world. But what about the most iconic character in European folklore, the enigmatic vampire? Emerging from the mists of Slavic tradition, vampires were originally viewed as malevolent spirits that used a corpse as a vessel, causing it to bloat, rise, and drink the blood of family members. This tale reflects a deep-seated fear of death in the afterlife prevalent in societies untouched by modern medical understanding. The belief in vampires arose from a lack of scientific knowledge, a world where decomposition was mysterious and terrifying. In villages where literacy was rare and scientific inquiry even rarer, people turned to folklore and superstition for explanations. When a corpse began to bloat, turn pale, and eventually rise, it was not seen as a medical phenomenon, but as a sign of a malevolent spirit using the body as a host. This belief led to rituals designed to prevent or stop a vampire's rise, including methods like decapitation, exhumation, and burning of the corpse. These practices, though gruesome by modern standards, were undertaken out of love and duty, a desperate attempt by families to protect themselves from the undead menace. But as Europe progressed from the Middle Ages into the Enlightenment, attitudes towards death began to shift. The rise of science and reason led to a decline in belief in vampires, or at least an attempt to explain them away as merely a disease. This evolution of thought is mirrored in literature, moving from Gothic horror to rational investigation. Bram Stoker's Dracula, for example, casts vampires less as supernatural beings and more as agents of a hereditary curse. This blending of the supernatural with the mundane reflects a society caught between the allure of the unknown and the rising tide of scientific thinking. In essence, the study of folklore allows us to travel through time, not just geographically, but also culturally. It enables us to understand how people in the past viewed the world, its mysteries, its dangers, and its wonders. Through their stories, we gain insight into their beliefs, their fears, and their hopes, ultimately enriching our understanding of what it means to be human in an ever-changing world. As we bring this journey to a close, I invite you to continue this exploration on your own. Seek out the myths and legends of your own cultural heritage. Uncover the layers of meaning hidden within seemingly simple tales. And as you do, remember that each story, each symbol, each character is a stepping stone to understanding the past. They are whispers from our ancestors, guiding us toward a deeper appreciation of our shared humanity. And if you wish to support our work and access exclusive content, please consider becoming a patron. Your support allows us to keep bringing these videos to everyone for free. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and above all, keep seeking the hidden echoes of our ancestral past. They are all around us, waiting to be discovered, waiting to be understood. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time and folklore. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us. Your support allows us to keep bringing these tales to life. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and above all, stay adventurous. Remember, the echoes of our past resonate in the stories we tell. Now close your eyes and imagine yourself stepping through a portal into the grand hall of a medieval castle. Lords and ladies dressed in silks and velvets are gathered around a roaring hearth. The air is thick with the scent of roasting boar and woods. Before them sits a young storyteller, ready to captivate their attention. For tonight he will weave tales not of spectral hunts or blood-chilling transformations, but of sly foxes and simpletons, of clever huntsmen and hungry wolves. Our time traveler is situated during the High Middle Ages, roughly between the 11th and 13th centuries in Western Europe. This was a time when societal hierarchies solidified and feudalism held sway, and as the nobility reveled in their luxurious halls, wolves became more than just wild creatures. They became pawns in a game of survival, morality, and even religion. In the tapestry of medieval life, wolves played a dual role. They were the dark force of nature that threatened the well-being of communities, but also a symbol to teach moral lessons to retainers and visiting nobles. The castle itself stood as a bulwark against the dangers of the outside world. Its sturdy walls and armed guards offered protection against not just marauders and invaders, but also against wolves. Within its secure bounds, the lord and his family could feast and relax. And yet the threat of the wolf never truly disappeared. Wolves could sneak into compounds, hunt down livestock, and even sometimes venture into villages, so the noble class developed unique ways to use and manipulate these threats for their benefit. Enter the bloodhound. While many castles had hunting dogs, the bloodhound took center stage. Its keen sense of smell and relentless pursuit made it ideal for tracking wounded animals, including wolves. In medieval texts, the bloodhound was often described as brave, tenacious, and resolute, much like the hunters it assisted. Imagine a pack of bloodhounds, tongues lolling, muscles rippling as they follow a scent through the forest, the baying echoing through the trees. And what about the wolf whistle? This eerie call was not just a shepherd's tool. It was a signal used throughout Europe to warn of approaching wolves. In medieval art and literature, the wolf whistle is often depicted as a haunting sound that chills the hearts of those who hear it. Some say it was a whistle that could imitate a wolf's call. Others believed it was a sound so shrill and piercing that it brought the wolf to a halt. Let us not forget the lyre of Orpheus. Legend had it that the Greek musician Orpheus could charm all living things with his enchanting lyre. In medieval retellings, his music was said to have driven wolves to dance. Picture this. A wandering minstrel, weathered face framed by a shock of white hair, strums a golden lyre as he sings tales of love and loss, daring adventure and the wrath of gods. And as his music fills the forest clearing, wolves emerge from the trees drawn by the irresistible melody. But no discussion of medieval countermeasures against wolves would be complete without mentioning the most formidable weapon of all: faith. Churches and monasteries often acted as sanctuaries, places where wolves were forbidden to enter. Monastic chronicles tell of wolves being driven away by the ringing of church bells or by the sight of consecrated objects. Monasteries frequently kept holy water fonts near their entrances, which were believed to repel wolves. Within the grand halls of high society, the wolf became a tool to enforce order and morality. The church actively promoted the image of the wolf as an emblem of Satan and evil. Sermons and writings frequently likened wolves to heretics, wild beasts that needed to be tamed or destroyed. Priests carried crucifixes to drive wolves away, symbolizing the triumph of good over evil. Medieval law gave lords authority to punish perceived wolf-like behavior in their communities, strengthening their control over their subjects. Wolves were seen as scapegoats, blamed for the death of livestock, mysterious disappearances, or even outbreaks of disease. Villagers accused of crimes or heresy might be symbolically linked to wolves, suggesting they were inherently dangerous and needed to be isolated or executed. These symbolic battles continued into the realm of art and literature. Tapestries, paintings, and woodcuts often portrayed wolves as menacing figures lurking in the shadows. Sometimes they were shown attacking defenseless lambs, illustrating the concept of the wolf in sheep's clothing, which meant that the greatest danger often came from the most unsuspecting sources. Romances and ballads featured wolves as symbols of untamed passions and primal instincts. Knights-errant were often challenged by wolves, symbolizing the struggle to conquer base desires and embrace courtly love. These stories may seem brutal and severe, but they also served a vital function. By confronting the darkness symbolized by wolves' head, the nobility affirmed their own goodness and order. Controlling these narratives allowed them to reinforce their position of power and ensure social stability. As the centuries passed, wolves continued to stalk the European landscape, inspiring awe and terror in equal measure. While they were celebrated in songs and feared in folktales, they remained an integral part of the cultural fabric. Even as monarchs gained more centralized power and feudalism waned, wolves continued to feature in the arts and literature. Romantic writers in the 18th and 19th centuries, including figures like Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Lord Byron, often used wolves to represent primal freedom and untamed nature. However, this fascination with wolves during the Enlightenment era also highlighted the growing disconnect between urban elites and rural populations whose lives were still deeply impacted by wolves. Throughout history, perceptions of wolves have been complex and multifaceted, from their portrayal as savage killers to their depiction as symbols of spiritual enlightenment. Wolves have captured the human imagination like few other creatures. In the tapestry of medieval life, they were woven into every aspect of existence, serving as reminders of the harsh realities of nature teachers of moral lessons, and even muses for artistic expression. Their presence, whether real or imagined, helped shape the beliefs, behaviors, and values of those who lived in a world where humans and wolves shared the land. But our journey through time is almost at its end. We have explored the fears and fascinations surrounding wolves in medieval Europe, how they were viewed as spiritual beings, ferocious hunters, and even instruments of societal control. We've witnessed how stories of werewolves blurred the line between humanity and the natural world. And now, as you prepare to return to your own time, consider the legacy of wolves in our world today. Although wolves are rarer than in medieval times, they continue to hold a prominent place in our culture and mythology. From the iconic Disney movie to the haunting melody of Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall, Part 2, wolves continue to capture our collective imagination. In Native American cultures, wolves are revered as totems representing loyalty, intelligence, and courage. Worldwide wolf conservation efforts are gaining momentum as we recognize the crucial role they play in maintaining healthy ecosystems. As you drift off to sleep, let the spirit of adventure guide you back to your own time and place. May the lessons learned and the stories heard in this journey serve as guiding lights in your own life's adventures. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this episode, please share your feedback. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the past. Remember, history is more than just dates and facts. It's a tapestry of stories that bring our world to life. And who knows, you might just find that you are part of that tapestry too. In the quiet dusk of your bedroom, let me spin you a tale, a whisper from long ago where the wind sings secrets through the trees. Let us step back to a time when France was new, yet its heart beat to the rhythm of old traditions. Picture a world where velvet curtains frame a firelit room, where crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows on the walls. Here, beneath the watchful gaze of gilded clocks, there was a gathering of minds, as sharp as knives and as dangerous as poisons. Welcome to my channel where the past speaks to the present through stories whispered across the ages. Tonight, we gather not as strangers, but as conspirators in a shared love for tales that have echoed through the corridors of time. Together, we shall unravel the threads of history, stitch by stitch, word by word, until we piece together the rich tapestry of our shared heritage. Our tale tonight: the many faces of the wolf. Imagine yourself stepping into a grand salon in late 17th century. Paris, the walls are hung with embroidered tapestries, warm with golden candlelight. Ladies sit in her-backed chairs, fans fluttering like quiet birds. Gentlemen stand in small groups, murmuring beneath curled periwigs. Here fairy tales were retold as refined entertainment. It was a time when the nobility sought diversion in fables and poetry, but always wrapped in layers of etiquette and moral instruction. Charles Perrault, courtier and author, gathered old village stories and rewrote them into polished literary tales. His Le Petit Chaperon Rouge, published in 1697, was no longer a dark peasant warning against predation or cannibalism. Instead, it became a lesson for young noblewomen on propriety and obedience. In his version, the wolf is not simply a beast of the forest. He is a charming seducer, a metaphor for men who prey upon women's naivety. The girl's doom is not caused by hunger or cannibalism, but by her own failure to follow social expectations. At the end, Perrault does not grant her rescue. Instead, he concludes with a moral verse, warning young ladies to beware of wolves who speak sweetly, for such wolves are not always of the forest. Over a century later, the brothers Grimm collected their own version of the tale in Germany. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm believed fairy tales were cultural treasures, remnants of a purer Germanic past. Yet even they reshaped what they recorded. Their Little Red Cap included the huntsman who cuts open the wolf, saving the girl grandmother and punishing the creature for his greed. This ending, with its violent justice, reflected 19th century moral order. Wrongdoing was punished, virtue was rewarded, and protection came from masculine bravery. The story, once about cunning, self-survival, became about obedience and rescue. Tales as tools of power and control for courts and scholars. Fairy tales were not mere amusements. They were instruments of socialization, teaching children their place in a carefully structured world. In villages, the story warned of wolves beyond the path. At court, it warned of improper flirtation, unchaperoned walks, and the dangers of curiosity. Imagine a young girl in a French chateau, her hair coiled neatly beneath a lace cap, listening to a governess read Perrault's version by the afternoon window. Outside, the gardens bloom in neat rows. There are no wolves here, yet the tale's moral threat remains, teaching her that punishment awaits those who stray from duty or modesty. The luxury of safety for the noble elites. Wolves were symbols, not threats. Hunts were organized in royal forests to kill wolves for sport, their pelts displayed as trophies of conquest over nature's danger. Unlike peasants who feared wolves as daily predators, nobles controlled and contained them, just as they sought to control and contain the fears of society through moral tales. Thus, Little Red Riding Hood transformed from a rough village warning into a refined fable of obedience. And so the story slithered and morphed, shedding its skin like a snake, adapting to new times while retaining its timeless core. Each retelling, each adaptation wove in the fears, morals, and aesthetics of its age. Through the Girl in Red, society held up a mirror to itself, both fascinated and repelled by the wildness that lurked just beyond the civilized world. The moon climbs higher, casting long fingers of light that beckon secrets from the shadows. Now we journey to another realm, a world where the ancient gods still walk among us, unseen. Prepare yourself, dear listeners, for the whispers that linger after midnight can be treacherous, weaving illusions to lead the unwary astray. But fear not, for as long as you hold tight to reason's lamp, you shall navigate these shadowy paths with steady steps. So join me, dear friends, and let us tread together into the mystical twilight, where reality as veils grow thin and the boundaries of our understanding blur. And then the Great Depression struck. Hope withered like crops in a drought, and dreams turned brittle and cold as winter wheat. From sun-drenched fields, people fled to city streets where the soup kitchens offered meager solace and bread. Lines snaked endlessly like tormented souls seeking absolution. Amidst this desolate landscape, the tales spun by the brothers Grimm took root. These German folk tales, once cherished for their timeless magic, were now seen through a lens of hardship and despair. The stark realities of poverty and struggle overshadowed the whimsy and enchantment that had captivated generations past. No longer were they an escape from the ordinary. They mirrored the harsh existence of millions. Snow White, once a symbol of untarnished beauty, now seemed an unrealistic ideal in a world where grime and exhaustion painted a different picture on every face. Cinderella's transformation from rags to riches was no longer a fairy tale. It was a desperate wish upon a star for a life free from the crushing weight of their circumstances. The magic mirror no longer reflected vanity. It showed a distorted image of their broken world, warped by desperation and despair. But amidst the bleakness, a glimmer of defiance emerged. In Rapunzel's soaring spirit, locked away in a tower, she found solace in her art. With paintbrush in hand, she captured the world as she saw it, infusing her canvases with vibrant colors that defied the monochrome existence around her. Her paintings became windows to faraway lands, offering a respite from the bleak confines of their reality. In Hansel and Gretel's perilous journey through the woods, many saw a reflection of their own struggles. The gingerbread house, a symbol of false hope, allured them with promises of comfort only to ensnare them in a web of deceit. Yet the children's resilience shone through. Their resourcefulness and courage in the face of adversity became a beacon, reminding people that even in the darkest of times, hope could flicker and endure. So too, the wolf, once a menacing figure in distant folklore, now stalked the streets in the form of hunger. It prowled the alleys, snatched scraps from overflowing bins, and haunted the nightmares of those who went to bed hungry. The girl in red, clad in patched garments, hurried along, clutching a basket of meager provisions. The wolf watched her, its eyes gleaming with primal need. This was no fairy tale. This was survival. And so the tale evolved yet again, adapting to a world on the brink. It was a grimmer version, more attuned to the struggles of an era. The girl's fate hung in the balance, a reflection of the precarious lives of those enduring the Great Depression. Yet within the story's somber notes, there resonated a defiant melody, a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to surrender to the shadows of despair. As the night deepens, the shadows grow longer, stretching like silent fingers that grasp at the fading light. It is in these hushed moments that the true essence of storytelling unfolds. For stories are not merely words that dance on the tongue or images that flicker in the mind. They are the very lifeblood of our shared humanity, whispering tales of our triumphs and tragedies, hopes and heartaches. They are the threads that weave together the vast tapestry of our existence, connecting hearts across time and space. Now, my dear listeners, I invite you to become not just spectators, but active participants in this timeless tradition. Share with me the stories that have touched your soul, the tales that have shaped your journey through life. For in doing so, you'll become storytellers yourselves, carrying forward the torch of oral tradition that has illuminated the path of countless generations before us. Together, let us create a constellation of narratives that guide and inspire, that comfort and challenge, that remind us of our shared humanity in an ever-changing world. Your stories, my friends, are not just echoes of the past or whispers of the present. They are the very building blocks of our collective future. So speak your truths, share your dreams, and let the symphony of our stories continue to resonate through the ages. In this episode of Lore, there will be no story and no grand finale. For one evening, we step back from the fires of legend and turn down the lamplight of lore. This is a night for quiet reflection, a moment of calm before returning to the wild hunt. Let us sit together, not around a roaring fire, but a hearth grown low, embers glowing softly in the dark. Here, without fanfare or frills, let us simply speak of all we've heard and seen, of all the tales we've gathered over these past years. With the flickering light painting dancing shadows on the walls, listen closely as I weave a brief history of our show, speaking not of triumphs, but of the quieter moments between the legends. There was a time before this show when I roamed the woods alone, gathering tales like fallen leaves, each story a whispered secret carried on the wind. In those days, I wandered far and wide, following trails both seen and unseen, until I stumbled upon an old crossroads deep within the tangled wilds of creation. There, at the fork of 3 untrodden paths, I built a small fire, lit a single lantern, and sat down to rest. Soon, others drawn by the warm light and crackling flames came wandering by. Some were weary travelers, some curious, some lost, and some simply drawn to the dancing shadows and stories shared by the firelight. I welcomed each newcomer with a mug of hot cider or a strong dark tea and listened while they spoke of their journeys. And when the moon climbed high in the heavens, I would tell them tales from my own travels. So the nights deepened into weeks and the weeks stretched into months. And still, every evening at the crossroads, new faces would gather, eager to hear stories whispered on the wind. Then one night, as the stars wheeled overhead and a gentle breeze stirred the leaves in the trees, I realized something profound. We were all bound together by our love of tales, each seeking solace, knowledge, or simple companionship in the quiet of the night. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't alone in my passion, nor were the stories I told mere whispers in the wind. They were threads in a tapestry, weaving us together into a community of listeners and storytellers. So I continued to travel the wilds, seeking ever more tales to share. And when I returned to the crossroads, I brought new stories with me, ones that resonated with our community, that made you, my listeners, think, question, and dream. Together, we explored the hidden meanings in age-old rhymes. We uncovered ancient wisdom and forgotten myths and pondered the secrets held within fairy tales. Yet even as we reveled in the magic of storytelling, I saw a shift in the crossroads. More and more, some faces grew distant, their eyes glazed over as if listening to a different tune. Their numbers slowly dwindled, until it was just a handful of us gathered in the fading firelight. And I knew it was time to move forward, to seek out new stories and adventures beyond the familiar trails. With heavy hearts, yet resolute steps, we left the crossroads and ventured forth into uncharted territories. Hand in hand, we faced chilling creatures that lurked in the mist-wreathed glades and delved deep into shadowy dells, where cryptic clues hinted at long-lost lore. We followed winding paths that led us through tangled thickets and across babbling brooks until at last, we reached a sun-dappled clearing bathed in the warm glow of twilight. And there, nestled amidst the whispering trees, we found a haven unlike any we had known before. It was a sanctuary where kindred spirits could gather, where the bonds of camaraderie outshone even the brightest star. Here, within this secluded realm, we were more than just listeners and storytellers. We became friends, sharing laughter, tears, and the profound solace that comes from knowing you're not alone on life's winding path. It was here, surrounded by the comforting embrace of true companionship, that I realized the true meaning of our journey. It wasn't about the miles we had traveled or the perils we had faced, but about the connections we had forged along the way. In the quiet moments when the day's adventures had come to rest, we sat by the fire and shared stories that illuminated the depths of human experience. We spoke of bravery, not in the face of dragons or dire wolves, but in the quiet courage it takes to be oneself. And then there were other nights when the shadows grew long and the air grew still, when tales of hardship and sorrow touched our hearts and reminded us of the fragility of existence. Yet even in these somber moments, we found strength in each other's presence, solace in knowing that we were not alone in our struggles. As the seasons turned and the leaves danced in the autumn breeze, we continued to seek out new adventures together, always returning to our haven, our sanctuary of friendship and understanding. But alas, even this idyllic haven was not immune to the passage of time. One by one, our companions began to drift away, each drawn by the invisible currents of fate to their own solitary paths. And as the years rolled on, I found myself once again at a crossroads, much like the one where our journey began. Now older, wiser, yet no less passionate about the tales that stir the soul, I realized that while our paths may diverge, the stories that bind us will endure. So here we are, gathered one last time in the soft glow of the heart's embrace. Just as I did all those years ago at the lonely crossroads, I offer you a warm mug of cider and the promise of adventure. For though our time together draws to a close, the spirit of our journey lives on in each of you. Go now, dear listener, and carry with you the wisdom and wonder that we've shared. May your steps be guided by the starlight and your heart warmed by the echoes of laughter and camaraderie. As you venture forth into the world, may you find solace in the friendships you've forged, and may your spirit forever seek out the magic that resides in the simplest of tales. Farewell, dear listener, and until we meet again in the grand tapestry of storytelling, may your life be filled with the joy of discovery, the warmth of companionship, and the magic that lies at the crossroads of adventure and dreams. Remember the laughter, the wisdom, and the bonds we've shared, for they are the treasures that will guide you on your way. And know that in the grand theater of life, our story may end, but your journey is just beginning. Go now, with a grateful heart and a spirit of adventure, and may the echoes of our shared tales forever resonate within your soul. And so ends our tale tonight. But do not turn away just yet, dear listener, for there is one final story I must share. And what better place to tell it than here, at the close of our journey together? It is the tale of a gift, a token of appreciation for those who have walked beside me on this winding path we call lore. Throughout our travels, you've showered me with kindness, support, and love beyond my wildest dreams. And as I prepare to embark on new adventures, I want to express my deepest gratitude to those of you who have been with us since the very beginning, who huddled around the flickering campfire at the crossroads and shared in the magic of our early tales. You hold a special place in my heart. Your loyalty and enthusiasm have been the guiding stars that have led me through the darkest of nights and inspired me to seek ever higher peaks of storytelling. To those who joined us later, drawn by the whispers of adventure on the wind, I extend a warm welcome to our family. Your presence has been a breath of fresh air, bringing new perspectives and invigorating our journeys with your boundless energy. Together, we've delved into the deepest mysteries and uncovered the most intricate lore, and I am richer for having shared these experiences with you. To those who've walked with us for a season, your contributions have left an indelible mark on our story. Your insights, your artwork, your music, and your very presence have woven tapestries of wonder that I will forever cherish. Though our paths may diverge for now, know that the bonds we've forged will endure. And finally, to those who've graced us with their presence for a fleeting moment, your curiosity and love for these tales have warmed my heart. I hope that in your journey through life, you continue to seek out the extraordinary in the ordinary, and that you to find the magic that resides in every story. Know that in the grand tapestry of our shared journey, each thread, no matter how long or short, has contributed to the masterpiece. And as I look back on our adventures together, I am filled with a deep sense of gratitude. And so, dear listener, as we stand at the precipice of new horizons, I want you to know that you have been the wind beneath my wings, the stars that have guided my path, and the very essence of the magic we've shared. Go now and carry with you the spirit of adventure, the thirst for knowledge, and the unwavering belief in the power of stories. Until we meet again in the grand tapestry of existence, may your life be filled with the echoes of laughter, the warmth of camaraderie, and the magic that resides in every tale.